Senior Democrat of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff of California. Thanks very much, Congressman, for joining us. How much of a threat are these so-called hard-to-detect homemade bombs?
They're a grave threat, and indeed, before these Paris attacks, the predominant fear that we had from AQAP was not a military-style assault like we saw in Paris, but rather that they would succeed in what they've been trying to do, which is smuggle explosives on aircraft. Of course, you had the underwear bomber, you've had the printer cartridge attempted bombing, and you have AQAP with some of the preeminent bomb makers trying to figure out ways to make explosives that can bypass or defeat our detection at the airport. So this is a grave concern.
Are there active, credible threats out there right now to the United States?
Well, I'd have to say yes. I mean, there aren't specific threats, so we don't have, time, place, that kind of level of specificity. But in terms of the overall threat posed by AQAP, that's very real. That persists today. We have to continue to work against that overseas and protect against it at home. And as we saw in Paris and in Sydney, in Ottawa and elsewhere, you can't have a perfect defense. We're large open societies, and it's a real challenge.
Have there been any plots that have been thwarted recently?
Well, there certainly have been plots over the last several years that have been thwarted, and there have been varying degrees of threat information that have come in. Some have proved to be more credible than others, but that's a constant process. And, I think whether it's in the United States or in Europe, probably not a year goes by, and sometimes not a period of months goes by, where they don't have threats in some level of progress that are disrupted.
We're told the ramping up of security at airports in the United States actually began a few weeks ago. So here's the question. How long has the U.S. known about this latest round of threats, these hard-to-detect bombs?
Well, we've known about that for quite some time, and I think you have reported over the last months and years about some of the changes in airport procedures, some of the things that you're required now to put through the screener that you weren't required to before. We've been in a constant period of adjustment based on what we learn our adversaries are doing. So this has been ongoing. I don't expect that'll change. We're dealing with an adaptive enemy that every defense we put up, they try to figure out ways to circumvent. But we have a lot of progress we need to make just in screening for explosives at airports, not even these potentially high-tech ones. I think there's a lot of work we do just to improve our processes, to make sure that TSA is operating effectively and efficiently. So there's a lot of work that has to be done, Wolf.
If the threat has been out there for a long time, why wasn't security intensified, not just recently, but a while ago?
Well, we try to make sure that the response is appropriate to whatever the threat is. If it's generalized threat information, we have to maintain that difficult balance between wanting adequate security at the airports, but also making the airports functional so it doesn't take forever for passengers to get through screening. As we get more credible, more specific information, we change our procedures, we target our procedures, we maybe put more focus on particular airports. So we're, continually trying to adapt.
Are smaller airports equipped to handle this kind of threat?
Some of the smaller airports don't have the same technology that can detect some of these explosives. So that's why I think the Secretary is making adjustments to put additional resources, or maybe have more random inspections, or use more, sort of eyes on target if they don't have the technological capabilities. So, we're trying to put those in place wherever we can. The terrorists do have the goal of attacking some of the major hubs and some of the major aircraft, so those remain the predominant threats. But there are vulnerabilities at some of the smaller airports.
Yes, there are. All right, Congressman, stand by. We have moments after the Charlie Hebdo massacre offers a shocking new look at the gunman. We're back with the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. Congressman, you've seen the new video. The two terrorists, Saeed and Sharif Karachi, they're yelling out very calmly, but they're yelling, "We have avenged the Prophet Muhammad." And then they supposedly say something about Al-Qaeda in Yemen. Has it been confirmed that this plot to kill these people at the magazine was an AQAP, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is based in Yemen, plot?
Wolf, it certainly looks like it was an AQAP plot. The missing piece, though, is was there some level of communication between that likely visit of at least one of the brothers to Yemen back in 2011 and the present? We don't know that yet. I mean, it's possible there was communication in between. It's possible that they decided after the passage of time to commit this attack, or there was possibly some trigger. But that still is not yet determined.
Does the U.S., the French, I mean, I know there's close collaboration. Do they know how Saeed Kouachi was funded for this operation? The trip to Yemen, there were reports he may have received, what, $20,000 to get weapons. What do you know about that?
Well, we're getting a lot of information from the French, but we have not yet been able to corroborate it ourselves. So I really can't confirm anything except that we are engaged in a wholesale exchange of information with the French. We're trying to share with them what we know about all of these suspects and any connection they may have to others. They've been providing us a lot of information, but it's not something that we've been yet able to confirm.
Are there 6 accomplices, a part of this so-called sleeper cell, still on the loose in France?
I don't know, Wolf. It's certainly possible that there are others. And there are a lot of questions that we're looking at in terms of who took that video that was of the third suspect after the attack on Charlie Hebdo. Was that on a tripod? Was there somebody taking that video? Were there others that either helped recruit them, helped them organize or finance this? There's still a lot of unanswered questions.
What about sleeper cells in the United States? What can you tell us about that?
Well, this has always been a concern of ours, that there are people that have been trained or recruited that are present in the United States. And, I think you have to distinguish between a couple different cases, and we don't yet know which France is, but there may be people that have been radicalized, that have been given instructions, that haven't decided whether they're going to follow those instructions. And there may be others that are deliberately waiting for a period of time in which they'll no longer be under the supervision or surveillance of the authorities, where they have more free range of action. So we have both concerns in the United States, just as they do in France.
The great concern is that there could be a huge surprise, that these sleeper cells, they could be sleeping for years before they're activated, right?
That's certainly true, but I also think it's true that in a far less formal way, there could be cells of people that have been radicalized, but that haven't made the decision yet themselves whether they're going to act on these instructions or act on their radicalization. And we don't know yet what the case was in France, whether they were told to lay dormant for a period of years, or whether, they got back to France and they decided they were involved in whatever they were in their personal lives, and that took a turn for the worse, and that caused them once again to act on these instructions. So I imagine that there's a whole spectrum of possibilities, and we have to be on guard for all of them.
Was ISIS involved in this?
That we don't know either. Clearly, one of the attackers is claiming an affiliation with ISIS. That could be nothing more than him saying that he's associated with it because he was inspired by their video or their formation of a caliphate. Or it could be something more formal than that, and at this point, Wolf, we still don't know.
You've seen the video, and we're showing it to our viewers now, Congressman. These guys are so methodical. They seem so cocky, if you will. It's very frightening.
It is, and, the way they killed that policeman who was lying on the sidewalk, the cold-blooded nature of it, it certainly looks like they had military training to be able to act that coldly, that methodically, that calculatingly. The degree to which they were able to fire on the police vehicles, it certainly looks like they had some degree of training.
So what's the most important thing the U.S. has to do now?
Well, I think we have to do our best to, to determine, what kind of an eye do we have on those that may have been radicalized overseas, that are living at the margins of our society and that have flirted with radicalism. We have to make sure that none of them decide to act much as these attackers did in France. I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of safeguarding our airports. And I think the broader mission of attacking those that have mental health problems that may be easily tipped into radicalism, as well as working with our religious communities in the United States to make sure we have open lines of dialogue. It's going to be a whole spectrum approach necessary to protect the country.
Congressman Schiff, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf.